Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tonic Accord. It is September 29th, 2020, and we are about to watch live the first presidential debate between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. It's going to start any moment, so we just kind of got to get a little bit of initial takes before we watch it together. If you're watching on YouTube, it may or may not be a little bit more edited down, but we are live streaming the whole thing on Twitch. Alex, hello. How are you doing? Introduce yourself for anyone new and to give me your initial takes.
What's up, brother? Well, it's here. We've been talking about this probably, pre-pandemic, but obviously everyone's been focused since the pandemic, and I am happy. I'm excited. I poured myself a cider here. I had a nice dinner, and I am ready to see this. And, the only thing I'll say going up to this is that I'm curious about the impact this debate's going to have, mainly because most Americans have their minds made up.
Yeah.
And I almost just see this as kind of being an unhealthy event of polarizing and kind of reaffirming our biases. So let's just see. But do you have any things you're curious they're going to talk about, or maybe big dark horses for either candidate? What do you think about this?
Well, I thought of a really interesting thing, which is the expectations, right? Um,
Yeah.
Weirdly, like Trump's narrative has been about Sleepy Joe. Joe can't even stay awake during an interview. He spills his words out. He has a bunch of gaffes, and in a way, that's almost lowered the expectations for Joe Biden going to this debate. And so all Joe has to do to beat those very low expectations is just to hold his ground. However, I think if I was his strategist, I would tell Joe to go in the attack because I think Trump is best when he's on the offensive. When he was doing shot after shot onto Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton could do nothing but just like smirk it off weirdly, and made Trump look really good. However, we've had Trump for 4 years, and with his recent comments about veterans, his recent tax return report from the New York Times, and the coronavirus, like the whole last 6-7 months, I think there's a chance for Joe Biden to put Trump on the defensive, and I think that would make Trump look bad, right? If Joe Biden's able to keep the punches up on his end towards Trump and not let Trump get in his rants, right? If Trump is able to rant and turn it into a rally, that's going to really hurt Joe Biden. But if Joe Biden's able to go on the offensive, he may look like the better candidate after this debate.
That's a good point. And, I guess I would even just go off of that and say I am confused as to why Trump, decided to say he thinks Biden's on something. I think that's a very interesting attack, and I don't think it's really going to work because I think we've all lowered our bar, and now basically that's just lowering our bar even more.
Right.
So what now? Biden and Trump are both to be on drugs. Perfect. So that's where we're at now with these debates, and I
Yeah.
do agree with you though. Is that if Trump can turn this into a rally, which I think he's going to try, it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And I just hope Biden sticks to the specifics. And I'm more curious about how he pushes Biden back on Trump's comment. Or sorry, I'm curious about how Biden pushes Trump back on his comments about not accepting a defeat, about
Right.
lawyering up, and maybe not acknowledging the ballots if they don't come in on the day of the election. I'm curious to see how Biden frames this. Honestly, I think this is definitely something we agree on. Is that this is all up to Biden. But the ball is in Biden's court, and I just hope he's
Absolutely.
ready. And I don't know if he's going to be an hour and a half could be interestingly long for both of these men, but we shall see.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk a little bit about like the objective of tonight, right? Because like you said, a lot of people are already in their corners. I mean, I don't think I personally don't think I'm going to see anything here that'll change my mind. I'm not a swing voter. Um, and I think I have some polling up that says if the debate were held today, 47% would say I would vote for Joe Biden today. 45% did say that they'd vote for Trump today, and the rest are either undecided or not going to vote. And that's not a huge lead, right? I mean, I understand that we talk about so much that the actual election comes down to electoral college. But as far as momentum, Biden has had a lead for the last probably 4 or 5 months, but his momentum has not been increasing. It's kind of been stagnant, and every now and then it slips down. So Biden is in technically the lead, but he's still in a challenger position, right?
Mhm.
It's definitely not, it's anyone's game at this point, and so I also think that if I was Joe Biden, how do I get my numbers up is not necessarily to try and pull Trump voters away. I think that's very difficult to pull a Trump voter into a Biden voter, but more to just put on such a good performance that people that weren't going to vote or didn't vote for anyone in 2016 feel compelled to vote tonight or to vote after tonight.
Right. And yeah, the last thing I'll say is that I think that's a really good point, because The Economist actually talked about that today, was the fact that we're kind of hoping on both sides to bank on fear. Like, Trump's obviously going to drive fear, but in a certain way, like, Biden is going to need fear, especially from minority voters, to turn out, and
Right.
I'm curious to see how that framing goes, because obviously Obama was an anomaly for minority voters. And I think Biden's going to kind of need to dance around and stick to his record, but also almost talk about the fear of another Trump presidency. And then on the other side, Trump is going to talk about a fear of a Democrat president and the protests, the riots, all that, mumbo jumbo. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm really curious to see what happens.
I am very curious to see what happens.
It'll be a shit show.
Yeah, I mean, as far as as far as long-term results, I don't think you might see a little bump in the polls and then a more pull back to the median, unless some kind of bombshell thing happens or Joe Biden passes out on stage, right, or whatever, But for the most part, if it's just like a kind of a normal debate and you can't really tell who did better, it really won't have much effect, I think, on come November.
Right. And yeah, we have Chris Wallace now up. I don't know how you feel about this, but I like that he is the moderator for this debate, because I think Fox News viewers are still going to want to watch, and Democrats and progressives and moderates do think Chris Wallace is, in an encompassing way, a good journalist, a good interviewer.
Yeah,
And
more so than like
I'm
Ann
excited.
Coulter.
Oh well, yeah. That's setting the bar low, but yeah, definitely. And here come the gentlemen.
Here come the cans. So I'm going to unmute now, guys, if you're watching the stream, and we'll probably mute in between little commercials and let you know our thoughts. I mean, I'm gonna say some things live just because I want to and it's fun. So cheers.
Oh yeah, of course.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight: why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think
I feel nervous for them?
Barrett
I feel like
would take
secondhand
the court?
anxiety.
President Trump, in this first segment, you go first. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris.
I was getting that same exact feeling.
Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time. Even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as
There you go. So he's totally fine with lame ducking it.
She will be outstanding. She's going to be...
It sounds like that's kind of his strategy.
That has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose.
Of the only justices not from an Ivy League.
Knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Civility.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing is on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And
Ooh, he seems nervous.
When we, in fact, passed the Affordable
He
Care
does.
Act.
He seems
And there's
extremely
100
nervous.
million people who have
I mean,
pre-existing
I would be
conditions,
too, right?
and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions.
It's bringing back
insurance
flashbacks to
companies don't
2016,
love
man.
So it's just not appropriate.
We'll see
to
how
do
it
this
goes.
before this
Maybe he
election.
just needs to warm up.
If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait.
This was
until
way too
February.
convoluted of an
There aren't
answer.
100 million people with pre-existing
Horrible
conditions.
answer.
As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. They
Don't even know where he was going.
Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
During
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years.
The
And the
election's
100
already
million
started.
people, Joe, the
Trump is
100
not
million
wrong.
people is totally wrong.
No,
I
he's
don't know
not
where
wrong.
you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly
knows
going
that.
to socialist. You're going to socialist.
There it is, there it is.
We're now into-
Quickly to the
gentlemen, we're now
socialist.
into
There it
open
is.
discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I
Hello, I'm
agree.
watching the debate in the
Go ahead,
background and
Vice
slightly
President.
checking once in a while.
He-
Cool.
he-
Thank you,
he
Shikyo.
knows that, what I
Yeah.
proposed. What I proposed is
It's gonna be a
that,
long one, so definitely a
we
backgrounder,
expand
that's for sure.
Obamacare, and we increase
Awesome.
it. We do not
Hello.
wipe any. And
Like
one
Shikyo.
of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what
that
your
is-
party
Biden's
is.
always
that
been
is
for
simply
Your party doesn't say it. Your party
Private
wants
and
to
public
go
option.
socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
Right
healthcare.
now, I am
And
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of.
Damn.
I
We're
approved
going in
of. Here's
strong.
The deal is that it's going to about
What are we, like 5 minutes in? Jesus.
Not according to Harris. That's an
200,000
interesting
people
speak.
that
He's
have
going to
died
try
on
and
his
push
watch.
the
There-
narrative
how many
over
of
to
those
Harris, the
have
more like
survived?
Californian
Well, there's 7 million
coastal
people
liberal.
that contracted COVID. What does it
Which could
mean for
definitely
them
work in
going
this
forward
culture
if you
conflict,
strike
I would say
down
we're in.
the
Yeah,
Affordable Care
certainly.
Act? And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing-
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the
Ugh.
military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And if
this.
you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't be
the deal.
200.
Boy.
It would be
See,
2
this
million
already
people
Trump's on the
because you were
offensive, and
very
Joe
late in
is
the draw.
fighting
You
blows.
didn't
It should be
want me to
the
ban
he needs to go the
China,
other way
which was heavily
around.
infected. You didn't want me
Yeah.
to ban
Totally agreed.
Gentlemen,
Europe,
no,
which was heavily
Mr.
infected.
President,
I'm just looking-
Much later, Joe.
I say strong, but
Mr.
kind of.
We're talking about 2 million people.
You're not gonna be able
President,
to
as
shut
the
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well.
Biden shouldn't
in
need the
court, in
moderator.
court.
He
And
needs
so
to.
That's
Yeah,
also
he's
at
a-
stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's on the
begun.
ballot.
I-
Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it
you
on the
said
ballot? It's not
you're-
on the ballot.
it's on
Wow.
the
I don't
court,
think so.
In the court. Well,
Interesting.
Nothing happening
Wow.
Donald,
Huh.
let me
there. You
just
don't know
clarify.
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't know
don't
her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's
Jesus.
talk- We got a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, we
gentlemen.
do.
We've got a lot of time,
Yeah, we
so-
do, Chris.
On health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election.
Hey, Alex, looking forward to an
in which the
exciting
Trump
debate. A Ukrainian guy.
Along with 18 state attorneys general.
What's up,
are
Ukrainian
seeking
guy?
to
Good to have
overturn
you in the stream, bud.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last.
Hello, sir. How you doing?
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
It's like Chris Wallace is doing better than Joe Biden on attacking Trump already.
Excuse me. I got rid of
Yeah,
the
for real.
individual
Joe needs to go on the
mandate, which was a big
offensive.
chunk of
He
Obamacare.
should-
That is absolutely a big thing. That was the
I
worst
didn't
part of
ask,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part of
me. Let me
Obamacare.
ask
What is it, a
you-
three-way?
Ask Joe. The
no,
individual mandate was the most unpopular
Vice Pre-
aspect of
Mr.
Obamacare. I
President,
got rid of it.
I'd like
And
you
we
to-
will
Mr.
protect people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you
Jesus,
can answer.
man.
your
Wow.
Come on.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what
Fact check, it is
the
true. He did do
healthcare
that.
plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something. There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health.
Go respond, don't laugh.
Yeah, yeah.
Insulin. I give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people because I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say,
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask
is
you
big.
about,
This
you'll
is
be happy,
big stuff.
sir. You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
well, if I can
sorry.
ask you the question, it will
Not what your
end.
party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie Sanders, who's far
did.
left, on the manifesto,
Well,
we
you-
call it.
well, manifesto-
You socialize medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you saying
I'm
you
not going
didn't
to
agree?
listen.
Halfway.
The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a
Quite
whole lot.
significantly,
I'm
actually.
not standing facing you, all, buddy.
Pretty
would've
significantly.
Left 2
Well, I
days
tell
early,
you-
you would have lost every primary.
How soon after the
It's a
debate
courtesy.
Trump tweets that Chris
Look,
Wallace is a
here's the deal.
Democrat agent,
I got
right?
very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well.
Oh, yeah.
And
If you're
tonight
center
will be
right
much
now,
sure
you're
because-
associated
Fitting.
with
Here's the deal.
socialism, I
Here's the deal.
guess.
The fact is that everything he said.
Yeah, I've
so
been
far
I've been
is
called
simply a
that.
lie.
Yeah,
I'm the center
well,
right
I've been-
myself,
I've
actually.
been called
Everybody knows
alt-right
he's
and
a
I've been
liar.
called a
But
communist. I don't think people really understand what those
I-
mean.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
He doesn't know how to do that.
I feel like Chris Wallace is the
He has-
preschool teacher now.
Right, seriously.
You'd be surprised. Go
The
ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy, the wrong night at the wrong
The chaperone
time.
for a high
You
school
agreed
dance.
with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let
Now
him-
you're disavowing it.
There is no manifesto.
He needs to just strike
number
back.
Speak, Mr.
Number
President.
two.
And I don't know if he can.
He has to just strike back. Like, would you stop being a petulant child, you big
agreed
baby? Like
with
something
Bernie
like that. Like
Sanders
just
on a plan.
give him a big
How-
fu.
Absolutely
Like
folks,
fight
do you
back.
have
If
any idea what this clown's
socialized, they
doing?
call it Medicare.
I feel like we're watching Fox News circa 2010.
He is not for any help for people needing health care because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are
Technically not
20
his
million
recession,
people getting
No, but
healthcare
he should
through
say that. And I'm
Obamacare
saying in the
now. If he
debate, do
wants
it.
to take
Associate
away.
all of the
He
COVID
won't.
problems
Everyone
and the
look in
recession
eye and
with
say
Trump.
that's what he
That's a
wants
good
to do.
plan.
Take it
True.
away.
I want to give
Number
them
You're right.
better
You're right.
healthcare
I'm just
at a
thinking
much
of just
lower
like a
price, because
debate
by the
thing.
way,
Like,
he
yeah, I
doesn't know
mean,
how.
He doesn't know how to do that.
of course it's more
Never
nuanced,
already
but
You're right.
fixed it to an extent.
He has never done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking
this is
at
going to
the
be a
same time,
long
it's
night.
let-
This is
let
going to
the
be a
president-
long
Go ahead,
night.
sir.
Obamacare
Where are my
is no more.
cocktails?
We made it
Yeah,
better,
it's-
and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate.
gonna be a
We
long
guaranteed
night.
pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is, and that destroyed.
College buddy
that-
Cole
they
just
shouldn't even
messaged
call
me.
it
This
Obamacare.
is
Then I had a
effing
choice
hard to
make. Do
watch,
I let
and
my
I
people run it
definitely
really
agree
well?
with that.
It is
Well,
hard to
badly.
watch.
If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
and I
known for.
just had a meeting
You
with
gotta
them. They
run
said
it
the
so
problem
well.
is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
I got you.
Premiums
I
are
got
too
it.
high, and
That's
it
what his
doesn't work.
people- that's what
So
his people said.
we do want to get rid of it.
It's
Chris,
an
we
open-
A
want
Ukrainian
to get rid
guy
of it.
said, "How
But
soon
I
after the
keep-
debate Trump tweets that Chris Wallace is a Democrat agent?"
Right.
Yep.
The vice president talks.
Good.
Fitting.
He has no plan for health care. Of
course we do.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none. Like almost
This.
everything else he
This
talks
is the
about.
Joe Biden
He
you need
does
to see more.
not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
There you go.
He's
I have one,
Here we go.
one final question for you.
Do more of that. Look at
Mr.
Trump
Vice
shakes his head.
President.
Do more of that. Call him an
If
idiot.
Senate Republicans
Like
I
attack
want Trump shaking his head like he has neck problems.
Yeah, like that's how you have to do it. Because Trump is always going to be offensive, right? It's we've seen it in the first 4 seconds.
About ending the filibuster.
You need to fight
or
back.
Even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take in that, that'll become an issue. The
not a
issue
good
is
answer.
The American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how
you gonna
strongly
pack
you
the
feel.
court?
Vote now.
gonna pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know.
He doesn't want
your
to-
Trump should
senators-
rightfully
I'm
ask
not
him
gonna
that.
answer the question.
Yeah.
Why didn't you answer that
Because
question?
the
You wanna
question
put a lot
is,
of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is,
justices
Something Joe
around
Biden
the
doesn't
left.
want to answer.
Will you
Of course
shut
he
up,
doesn't.
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so-
list?
Right.
Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the
unprecedented.
court.
We have,
We're not going to give a list.
we have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it?
Interesting.
Keep yapping, man.
The people understand. For 47 years, you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than
Chris
7
Wallace does
million
feel like a
cases
kindergarten
of
teacher, like,
coronavirus in the
He
United
does.
States, and
holding
more
the
than
two.
All right, here's your one, dude.
100,000 people
Speak nicely to your
have
fellow
died.
classmates.
Even
Please
after
don't
we
speak
produce
when someone else
a
is
vaccine,
speaking.
Experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 5%, 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, "It is what it is." Well, it is what it is.
Trump
because
looks
you
pissed.
are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing.
True.
He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
Wrong.
I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing.
Michael, your mom's here to
I laid
pick
out
you up.
in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course.
Ironically, though,
and
both of them
Oval
have been
Office
in
and bring
bunkers,
together
haven't they?
Democrats and Republicans
Yeah.
and fund what needs to be done now
They're both
to
the hidden
save
presidents of a
lives.
dark time.
If we would have listened to
You
you,
have 2 minutes, sir.
The Ukrainian guy says, do you think Biden will try to bring up the Trump tax returns tonight?
I think he'll try.
I hope so, but honestly, based on where they're going, I don't know if they're going to get to it.
It's China's fault.
Yeah.
It should have never happened. They stopped it
Should,
from going in, but it
'cause
was
it's
China's fault. And by the
awful.
way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many
It,
people
it would
died in
have to
China.
be like a
You don't know how
quip,
many
right?
people
Like,
died
you
in
know,
Russia. You don't know how
we
many
need to
people
provide
died in India.
stimulus
They don't
checks to
exactly
every
give you
American for
straight facts, just so you
like
understand.
$750,
But
which
if
is
you
just
look at
about
what
more
we've
than
done,
Trump
I
paid in
closed it,
taxes
and you
last
said
year or
he's
whatever. Like,
xenophobic.
because
He's
I don't think it's on the
racist and he's
docket.
xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country.
No, just-
Wait a minute.
It's his 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors
At the
said I
beginning,
did a
Trump worked
phenomenal
well with
job.
governors.
Most of them said that.
That is
But in
true.
fact, people that
They-
would not be necessarily on
bipartisan.
our side said that. President
For
Trump
like a
did
month.
phenomenal job.
Phenomenal.
We did.
Yeah, but then it
Still,
also
though.
wasn't a
Down,
phenomenal
we got
job.
the
I wouldn't
No,
go
that
that
wasn't.
far.
made the
Still, it
ventilators.
was
You would have
like,
made ventilators.
he should have had a
And now
federal
we're weeks
plan. He
away
was just
from
leaving
a
it to the
vaccine.
governors.
We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people.
Also,
are
the
dying
irony
when
is
they
that,
get
yeah,
sick.
he shut the
Far
borders
fewer
with
people are
China,
dying.
but
We've done
a lot of
great
studies
job.
show the virus
only
came
thing
from
I
Italy.
haven't
From
done a good
Europe,
job,
yeah.
And that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do
done.
very well in swine flu.
Oh, God. I knew he was gonna
H1N1,
bring
you were a
this up.
disaster.
Like, what the
Your
hell?
own chief of staff said you were a
14,000
disaster.
14,000
Different.
people died, not 200,000. There was
A
no
very-
economic recession.
Sir, you made a
Far
There was
less
no
lethal
recession.
disease,
You made a
by the way.
point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of
Okay.
you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
people?
Far more
Unbelievable.
people. You would have been
And by the way,
months late.
It's just not true.
It's really not.
CDC
Not true,
director
man.
says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now
Swine
and the
flu
end
was
of the
just
year.
different,
And
man.
he held up a
Yeah.
It's
chart.
bad.
If we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of
Okay.
the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson &
Fauci.
Johnson,
We-
Pfizer?
No.
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slawi, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it
Sure.
a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them
you're
left, I don't know
suggesting
what
that
I
the
call them.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slawi?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He said
Dr.
it's a
Redfield.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also
I'm
be
talking about when
after
it's
that.
generally available.
See, now right here when Trump
We have
is
the military all set up logistically.
messing up
They're
a
all
bit,
set up.
this is when Joe
We
needs to
have
do
our
what Trump
military
does and
that
just
delivers
mention in, like,
soldiers,
you can't
and
even
they
agree
can
with a
do
scientist.
200,000 a
Your own
day.
administration doesn't
They're
agree
going
with
to
you.
be
Like, just
listening.
clip that in, piss him off.
It's all set up.
Right.
By
I think it'd be an easy question is why do you always want to
warm
differ
weather would be
from the
gone.
experts,
Iraq
even in your
is
own
like a
effing
miracle.
administration?
Yeah.
Like it's
Maybe you
not
could
it's not
inject
it's
some
not rocket
bleach in
science
your
here.
arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That
same
was
man.
said sarcastically,
That was
you
him.
know that. That was said
And so
sarcastically.
here's
People
the deal.
died
I don't
because
think
of
either
that.
men are
People
qualified.
died. People
About a
died because
vaccine.
of that bleach comment.
Every serious
Totally.
serious
And they still
company is
are.
talking
Yeah.
about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year, but the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can
This is
trust
so
the scientists,
milquetoast.
but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
There you
But
go.
you're saying
Everybody
you can't, or
knows.
Senator
And-
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the
No,
scientists.
well, no, you can trust the
Ben just has to
scientists.
warm up the
She
engine
didn't
a
say
little
that. You
bit.
can't trust
She
the
said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by
I
the way,
spoke to the
and Fauci,
scientists that are in
and
charge.
By the way,
They will have the vaccine very soon.
Let him finish.
do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about
Here we go.
the whole issue relating to COVID?
Right.
He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess
Probably
what?
both.
A lot of people died. And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done it.
Let's have this debate.
And if
We'll
you
see
would have
who's-
had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
To be honest, I don't
If you
think
would've
either one of
had
these guys should be
the
like
charge.
judge of
No.
intelligence.
No.
The greatest
It's really
economy in
funny.
the history of
Trump
the
graduated
country.
bottom
And
of
by
his
the way,
class
now it's
too
being
and paid his
built
way through
again.
college.
So
Like,
you
bro.
Get to the economy in the next segment, sir.
Doesn't even have SAT
It's
scores
going
that
up
exist.
Yeah.
When it comes to how the virus,
That's
has
what. But
been
that's what Biden
handled
should have
so
said.
far,
Oh, if you're so
the
smart,
two of
release
you
your
have
SAT
taken
scores,
very different
dummy.
approaches,
Like
and
that's
this is
it. Just
going to
fight
affect
back.
how
Get
the
nasty,
virus
because
is handled going
his whole
forward
like
by whichever of you
slow
ends up becoming
pace
the
is
next
not working
president.
for me,
I
at
wanna
least for
quickly
me.
go
Maybe it
through
is for
several
others.
of
No, it's not working for me
reopenings.
either.
Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant.
I think Trump's winning this debate so far, but not in like substance, but in
No.
responsiveness.
It's just an attitude, but it might backfire. Like if he really acts like a petulant child, maybe people will realize like he's just kind of being an a-hole. Like I mean, obviously his base loves this, right? His base is loving this, but it's those middle ground, or maybe the non-voters that see how bad Trump is and want to vote again.
And Schumer,
by the
Brian,
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even
Do
meet
they?
with them. The Republicans won't meet him in the Senate, and he sits in his golf course, and well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do.
No, I
No
disagree
way.
with
There's
that
no
statement.
way Joe Biden plays more
He wants
golf.
to shut down this country.
Trump's over 300
You can even
days,
say
by the
Obama
way.
maybe played.
Yeah, Trump's over 300 days
could-
golfing
maybe-
since he got elected. That's almost a year.
Yeah.
We wanna,
I've never seen Biden play
he wants
golf,
to shut
actually.
down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't.
If we had better health care,
Younger people aren't. We've learned a lot.
maybe
But
we
he
could
wants
have.
to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd. Because it's a political.
I feel like Trump's focused only on the election. He's like, if they close it, it's because of the election. If it's COVID, it's only the election.
Yeah.
Maybe two things can be true at once.
Increasingly question the effectiveness.
Well, it shows
of
where
masks as a disease preventer.
his mind
And in
is.
fact,
All he cares
recently
about is
you have
election.
cited the issue of
True.
waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are
of
okay.
Masks are
I understand.
okay.
If you
Perfect.
look,
I'm
I
glad
have a
he's
mask right here. I
great
put
seal of
the mask
approval
on,
here.
You know, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rally.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say,
Like that's an insult. That's so funny.
Look, the way to open businesses.
That's the culture
is
war,
give them
man.
the
That
wherewithal
is.
to
It
be
really
able to
is. His base
provided
just
money,
loved
the
that
con-
I
comment.
was
I'm
asking
sure.
you, sir, about masks.
They're all
Masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also
It
said the
matters.
opposite. They've also
And
said
no-
Have they said the
no serious
opposite?
I'm
person
not
said
sure
the
of that.
opposite.
They've
No
also said, well, look,
serious.
I haven't heard the opposite.
Dr. Fauci said the
He
opposite.
did not say
No,
that.
Dr. Fauci said the opposite in February when they wanted to save PPE
Then he
masks
changed his
for the
mind. He said masks
hospitals.
good.
Right.
I'm okay with masks.
I
I'm
want to
not
ask you
fighting
both about
masks.
one last.
It's a big
because
difference, bro.
Yeah.
Your different
I'm
approaches
sorry.
has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people.
Remember when Herman Cain died because of
Yes,
that?
sir. Agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding
Selective
much
memory.
smaller events with
Because nobody will show up.
people with.
Well, it's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You goes first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
I've
not
done a
worried
great
about it
job
spreading
as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up.
Biden's
No
laughing.
way.
He sure isn't saying much.
30,000 my ass, dude. I have not seen a photo of 30,000 people. I've seen like 5,000.
No problem
30,000 my
It's
ass,
outside.
bro.
That's a big difference according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours
Yeah.
notice. And Joe
Some
does
people
the
like to hear
circles and
Trump
has three
ramble.
people someplace.
Sure.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative
cheek to
effect.
jowl. No negative
Herman Cain
effect.
died.
We've had no negative effect, and we've had 35, 40,000.
right.
Guess that's not a negative effect.
Quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
Ben, he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the
Nobody cares.
gentlemen?
You can
This is the
Oh,
most
yes.
bullshit
economy
discussion right here. I
Yeah.
am sorry. Nothing has been accomplished, and I have learned nothing or changed nothing.
In the second quarter, the
That's
unemployment rate
true.
fell to 8.4%.
I'm
last
sorry.
month.
Like, this is horrible.
Reserve says
This
the
is
hit to
just-
growth, which is going to be there.
This is
not
tough
going
to
be
watch.
Nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump,
Both
you
of them
said
look
we are
like
in a
neutered dogs
V-shaped
right here. Look at
recovery.
that. They're
Vice
Hey, look,
President
I can
Biden
tell
will
that
say
Joe
it's more
Biden
of
wants
a
to just
K-shape.
fight Trump, and I
What
would love to see
difference
that. I would
does
love
that
to, and
mean
vice versa.
would-
A
the
fist fight would be
American people
awesome.
In terms of the economy, President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we
Just
closed
call
it
it the
down, which was
coronavirus,
very
bro.
hard psychologically
Sorry.
to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2
The
million
Ukrainian
people
guy
will be
says
dead
this is
now
basically a
instead of
family political
still
debate at
200,000
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
people.
true.
It's
Everyone's
too
talking
much.
over each
One
other.
person
No
is too much.
policy.
Least there's-
All
Never happened
it's
from
all just
China.
like quick
But what
talking
happened is
points.
we
F you.
closed it
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
and now we're reopening.
I mean,
And
I
we're
was
doing
not
record
expecting-
At least there's
business.
booze at
We had
Thanksgiving.
10.4
Yeah, I was
million
not
people
expecting
in
a
4-month
detailed
period
policy
put
discussion,
back
that's for
into the
sure.
workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough
It's not Democrats-run
shutdowns. And
states,
I'm
it's
telling
every
you,
state.
because they
Yeah,
don't want to
Texas shut
open it.
down
One of
twice.
them came out last week.
Georgia
You
shut
saw
down
that.
twice.
Oh, we're going to open up.
He's
in
right.
North
There is
Carolina
alcoholism and
because it's
depression
after the
and
election.
anxiety
They
and
think
domestic
they're hurting
violence that
us by
has
keeping it closed.
skyrocketed. He's
The
not
other
wrong,
people-
but
No, he's
it's
not
not
wrong.
just
people know what
Democrat
to do.
states.
They can social distance. They can wash
And
their
he's
hands,
again,
they
he's
can wear a
associating
mask,
Joe Biden
they
as
can
something
do
that
whatever they want.
Joe
But
Biden
they
had
gotta
no
open
control
these
over.
states up. When you look at
Right.
North
Which is
Carolina,
smart.
We need to remember,
These
guys.
governors are under siege.
Yeah, we need to
Pennsylvania,
remember Trump is the
Michigan,
president.
and a couple
Biden's not the
others.
president.
Open the
Yeah,
states
everything
up.
that has
We tend to
happened
forget
has
that.
happened.
You're talking
Everything that
about
has
almost
happened
it's
has
like
happened
being in
under
prison.
Trump.
And you look at what's going on with
Yeah.
divorce. Look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your
Incredibly
turn,
well,
sir.
sir.
We're now moved to
Hyperbole.
you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
There it is.
No, sir, it's his
Mr.
Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the
There's
2
the
minutes,
taxes.
So please let him have
So
it.
there, a
You might
Ukrainian
time
guy
out.
was
The
right.
fact is that he is, in fact, worked on this in a way
Yeah.
that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those
service
people who
and-
have been out
yeah.
there dying, people who've been putting themselves in a way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States.
Sure thing,
of America.
Chico.
And he
Yeah,
wants to
man.
open it up
We
more. Why does he
we
want to
live
open
stream
it up?
about
Why
once
doesn't
every
he
week
take
on
care
usually
of
on
America? You
Tuesdays,
can't
and then
fix
we
the
also put
economy until
like
fix the COVID
podcast
crisis.
videos up on
And he has
YouTube
no intention
at
of
the
doing anything
Tonic
about
Core
making it better
if you're interested.
for
But
you
of
all
course,
at
no pressure.
home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools.
But yeah, if you do
Why
want to
aren't
catch us
schools
on
open?
some other stuff, we talk
Because it
about
costs
global
a lot of
politics,
money
world
to open
politics, and of course
safely.
U.S.
You know,
politics.
they
You can
were gonna give-
follow
his
this channel.
administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take
Good thing
care
for
of the
Biden to say.
needs
I
of the
think a lot of
American
people are going to
people
miss
so
it,
we
but
can open safely.
talking about the
Your time is
closures
up,
of
sir.
small
We're gonna
businesses,
get to
and
Right.
you know, I think that is a crucial thing that a lot of progressives don't really want to talk about with these lockdowns. So I'm glad he does.
No, people want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not
Again,
sure it
but
can
like,
ever
see, if
recover
I was
what
Joe
they've done in
Biden, I'd be
New
like,
York.
all this happened to
People
you. Like,
want
why don't
their
you do
places
something about
open.
it? Like, you've
They
done
wanna get
nothing.
back to
Like,
their
you should just
life.
bring it
They
back
ought
on
to
because
be
this
careful,
is
but they want their
remind people
schools
that
open.
Trump was the
I'm the
president.
one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football It was me, and I'm very happy to do it.
Chico, by the way, if you're liking the commentary, as always, please follow the Tonic Accord on here. We're on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You can find a lot of our commentaries, which are different, but similar kind of vibe, mantra.
You were elected president in 2017. Your first year as president.
This is more of a relaxed reaction than like a researched
income tax
podcast.
Each of those years.
Which I'm enjoying.
Yeah, it's fine.
I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid more for my new car tires last week.
Millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million
show us.
1 year. I went. You'll see
It's different than the New York Times. Let's see it. Why are you holding it up?
Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets
Sweet,
are
Chico. That sounds good, man.
And we have
hope your project goes good.
I built
Sir,
a great
I'm asking you a specific question, which is.
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here,
okay, he said it. It's on the record now.
I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're
he said it.
They go through the laws, and that's what it is.
Did you see that? Go through the laws. He said go through loopholes is what you mean.
These privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building.
Keep hitting him. Joe Biden needs to keep hitting him right now. He's on the defensive right now.
Right now?
By the way,
yeah.
Fucking punch. Excuse my language. Excuse my language, guys.
No, but that's what he should do.
Go for it.
Right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond.
There we go.
Look,
Okay.
the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes, on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're the
way,
worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe, I've done more in 47 months.
Sorry, but I don't like this tit for tat.
No,
really don't.
it's bad. They both look bad. They both look bad. It's funny to watch, but they both look bad.
I taught English in Spain for the last 3 years. This sounds like the literal first graders I had. You're not cool. You're the dumbest kid in my grade. Cool, man. I hope by the time you're, 95, you could do something better?
Yeah.
Say something better?
Big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes.
This is a terrible look for our democracy, that's for sure.
$4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis been done by Wall Street firms.
Oh, God. Here we go.
Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two,
Can Biden just talk about the elephant in the room?
$1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about
What's that?
buying American. That we're going to make the
For me,
government spend
it's pushing Trump on the
$600
fact
a year
that he
on
talks
everything
about
from
service and
ships to
patriotism,
steel
Oh,
to
right.
and he
buildings
thinks
and all
that our country would run phenomenally on no one paying their taxes.
Right.
I think that's a very valid thing to push him. Okay, cool. So if he's telling all of his voters not to vote, not to pay taxes, I'd love to see economically what that would do to our country if everyone decides, okay, I'm not going to pay my taxes either, like Trump.
What's that? That's a philosophic measure of validity. It's like where you apply one action to everyone in the world. Like is it like you think, oh, is it okay for me to do something? If everyone in the world would do that, would it be a better world? And that's a good one for this. Like, right, if I dodge taxes, if everyone in the world did that, would it be a better world? No.
Let me, Mr. President,
Hopefully not.
pick up on that. You would continue your
unfortunately, struggling people are now paying Trump's taxes as well, practically.
Not lower taxes.
Dude, I paid more taxes than this guy.
Fucking nuts, man. Excuse my language again. Sorry, guys. Usually I don't curse a lot, but
you
cut me off.
Did you pre-game this?
I've had 2 ciders.
They had the slowest
I wish I had more wine.
recovery
I finished my wine.
since economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks.
Chico recommends another glass, Drew.
I know.
free to get another
I just don't have any more.
I'll tell you what,
I need to go get
half
some.
of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and
I just don't
plenty
have
of
any more
companies that
wine.
are
I
already
believe
there
me.
will leave.
I would love a couple more with this, with the way this is
You'll have
going.
a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look,
Can I airdrop
the worst
glass to you?
Yeah, right.
depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
he blew
booming.
it. He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
It's actually one of the strongest recoveries.
Yeah, it did take a while, but the economy Trump inherited was pretty good.
Before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before
Things can be true at once. Trump did make maybe the economy better.
Yeah, sure. The economy increased during the first
Number
3
three.
years.
They said it would take. No, you were number 2.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing.
No, but see,
They
he
gave
brought
up
back
on
700,000 jobs, but
manufacturing.
another like
Standard
4
fare.
million were lost. Like plants that Trump would visit have also closed down.
I was asked to bring
Coal-
back
coal- remember he said
Chrysler
coal was
and
coming back?
Brought
Coal's
back right
dead.
Here in the state of Ohio and Michigan, he blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best.
Can I
year
see a
they've
stat
ever
for
had.
that?
Many car companies came in from Germany, from Japan.
I see a stat
went to
for that.
Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher
Ooh,
deficit
that was
between
that was definitely a rehearsed line.
the highest trade deficit.
Oh yeah.
Some campaign writer wrote that and was like, give it.
No wonder your son goes in and he takes out.
Amala was like,
he
Biden,
takes
you
out
better
billions
f***ing
of
say
dollars,
this before we
takes out
record.
billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also,
Simply
while
not
we're at it,
true.
why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million.
is
What
not
did he
true.
do to deserve it?
That
What
is
did he do with Burisma
none of
to
that.
deserve
Trump is
it?
no person to talk about.
That is true.
Yeah, that's why you should
Russian-
come back. Be
None of
like,
that
what
is
about
true.
your 400 million to Deutsche Bank, right? Who do you owe money to?
President, please.
Yeah.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million?
What about the
yet?
Trump Tower in Moscow? That you were literally in a hole and all of a
See,
sudden
fight
you...
back. He needs to look at Trump. Like he's looking at Chris Wallace. Look at Trump and fight back.
It's a fact.
Biden's weak, man.
You have raised an issue. Let the
I will just say it.
Did Burisma
He's showing it
make
here.
$183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr.
look,
President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
No, that's not a good thing to say.
let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His
Oh, God.
position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
who?
And
The media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our
Media means
allies,
nothing
by the
anymore.
World Bank,
Like,
Yeah.
come on.
by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people
President,
who
please stop.
testified under oath.
Mr. President, please stop. Please stop.
Listening to you.
People under.
You got $3.5
Honestly, Drew, at this point,
million
I'd be kind of just down with Chris Wallace stepping back and just letting him... Like, obviously, this is not going to be our typical debate. As well just...
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who
That
testified.
fight.
Sure,
Just
you've
let
already
them...
fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't
Well,
do a good
here's
job. With you,
Go
they
ahead.
say,
You get
"Look,
the, wait a minute. You get
Jesus.
the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
hey, let me just
Hey, there we go.
Hey.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply.
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million
He
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already...
family,
No, let him go.
my family
already
lost
wrote.
a fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go ahead,
government.
sir.
And that's...
Helping us with government, dude. No one wanted your daughter Ivanka doing
My
nothing.
family or his family. It's about your family.
I don't even think Trump
American
supporters really want
doesn't-
Ivanka there.
That's not
No.
true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
you
here.
should-
All right,
Not about here.
that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
Oh.
He didn't take that.
What are we moving on from, Drew? Can
Yeah,
you tell
I
me
don't
what
even remember
we're...
what segment that was. What was the
Stood
original?
up.
No,
He stood up
the answer to
and
the
he
question is no.
threatened
I'm just
Ukraine.
following
Sir,
with $1 billion.
vaguely
That
here.
is
Okay,
absolutely
Jesus.
not
Stop.
true.
Tape doing it.
You're going to
On
have
tape.
True.
Gentlemen,
Is-
I hate to raise my voice,
he's
but
on
it seems
tape.
to be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
Good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that
Jeez.
segment,
What are
we
we,
should
at
have
almost an
2
hour?
uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr.
Yeah.
President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something
Oh boy,
else,
here we go.
ahead.
This is gonna be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well,
Oh, come
you
on, what a
weren't interrupted,
child.
That's all right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
there's
than
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what
They are
directly
getting scolded,
led
aren't
you
they? They are. They're like
to
two
launch
like
this run for president.
toddlers. They're just
President
fighting over
Trump, you
the mind
have
who
often
can play
said that you
Minecraft
believe
next.
You have done more for Black Americans than any
Yeah,
president
time out in the
possible
Chris Wallace. I will
exception
take
of
away
Abraham
your
Lincoln.
juice
My
box if you
question for
guys
the two
don't
of
stop
you
interrupting each
is
other.
Why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country?
Also, I just want to say it's probably
Vice
total
President
BS
Biden,
that
you go
Biden's
first.
like, oh, Charlottesville,
It's
I'm all of a
about
sudden
equity
running against
and
Trump.
equality. It's
Like,
about
I'm sure
decency.
Biden,
It's
as soon
about
as
the
Hillary lost in
Constitution.
2016, he's
And we
like,
have
I'm
never
in.
walked away from trying to
Yeah.
require
Yeah.
equity for everyone, equality for the whole of
I don't think it was Charlottesville.
We've never accomplished
Maybe
Maybe
this.
though. I
We've
mean,
never
we don't
changed
know.
his
away from
We
it.
don't know,
Can't
but
do it.
you're right. I mean,
It
it's
is
probably a
true. The
lot
reason I
longer
got in the race is
planned,
when
but
those
we don't
people
know.
Close your eyes. Remember what those people
You don't know,
said
but he's a
coming out of the
47-year-old
fields
or
carrying
47-year
Yeah.
politician. I
Beauty
don't have that
and
much
just
faith.
spewing
Well, I wonder how much of it
anti-Semitic
was the
bile
Democratic
and
Party
accompanied
being
by
like,
the
look,
Ku
if
Klux
Hillary
Klan.
couldn't
A
do
young
it, we
woman
need,
got killed.
you know.
And they asked the president what he thought. He
And
said
we don't
they're
want Bernie
very
to do it, right? Because they're
fine
not that
people on both
progressive, like the
sides.
party establishment.
No
I wonder if the party
president's
stepped in
ever
was
said
like, Joe,
anything
please.
like that.
Finish this.
It is who's
Now,
who in
second-
it, sir.
Second
wish the
point I'd
Republicans
make,
did
Joe,
that.
is that when
Yeah.
Floyd
Rest
was
in peace,
killed,
John
when Mr.
Kasich,
Floyd
dude. What
was
happened to that
killed,
guy?
There was a peaceful
Miss you,
protest in
John
front of the
Kasich.
White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he
That's
doesn't
great.
do
He can't
something
even
quickly,
pronounce
by
it.
the end of the year, 1
Yeah.
in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should
curious to see how he
Americans
responds here.
Trust you
Probably gonna talk about
over
jobs
your
and
opponent
employment.
To deal with
he
racism.
did a crime bill.
And that
1994.
now like 10%
You
black
call
vote.
them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American.
It's not wrong.
population
Trump
community,
has-
You have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement.
That's
almost
not.
every
Also,
law
that's not
enforcement
ethical. You're not
group
supposed to
in the United
openly give
States. I
political
have
support
Florida,
if you're
I
in the
have
active
Texas,
military. It's
I
probably
have
ex-military.
Ohio, I have,
Right.
excuse me, Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters.
Trump's been
And
caught
why
in the
aren't you saying those
catch-22.
words,
Like,
Joe? Why
he's
don't you say the
condemning
words law
Biden for being
enforcement?
hard
Because
on crime
you know
in the
what? If he
90s,
called us
Yeah.
and then in the same
we would
sentence,
put
he's
out that
saying that
fire in
Biden
half
doesn't
an hour,
understand
but they
law
won't do it
enforcement.
because they're run by
Interesting
radical left
take.
Democrats.
Backfires.
If you
Biden's
look at
actually a pretty
Chicago,
law and order
if you look
guy,
at
if
a
I could say
place you
so.
wanna
Yeah.
look, Seattle. They heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top
Trump, you just
40
quoted why
cities
he does
are
believe in law and
run
order.
by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country
looks like he's gonna
want
explode
and
right here.
demand
Yeah.
law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is.
There you go. That's him saying he doesn't like all the parts of the protest.
Yeah, and he said that for a while.
Yeah,
he said that multiple times.
Biden's not articulate, but I see a guy who actually understands what's happening right now.
I'd like
Yeah.
to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else.
I hate when he says that. You know it, I know it. It's such a
If you were a
like
certain
bottom of
Yeah.
the
person,
barrel rhetoric
you had no
device. I mean,
status in life.
he's
It
made
was
it
sort
work,
of a
but it's just a
reversal.
shame that it works
And
on
if you
people.
look at the people,
It's
we
such
were
a
paying people
disgusting
hundreds of
rhetorical
thousands of
device.
dollars to teach very bad ideas.
Yeah, you and I have
frankly,
learned in
very
political
sick
science
ideas.
is that you
And-
always
and
define your
really,
terms.
they were
Yeah.
teaching
I always want to be
people
clear and
hate our
upfront about
country.
what you're
And I'm not
talking
gonna
about.
do
And
that.
Trump
I'm not
almost
gonna allow
does
that
the
to happen.
vagaries there. He completely
We
does
have
the
to go
opposite.
back
He completely
to
does the
core
opposite, and he
values of this
does
country.
sweeping
They were teaching
generalizations.
people that our country
Everybody
is a
knows
horrible
it.
And
place.
that's
It's
like
a racist place, and they were teaching people
political
to hate our
science 101
country,
not to
and
do
I'm not
that.
going to allow that to happen.
Because it leaves like Pandora's
Nobody's
box
doing
of
that.
like
He's just-
counter
he's
arguments and
racist.
Well, it's like
chaos.
with your
I know
claim,
a
and
lot more
you
than
make a
that.
claim, and then your
Let me
evidence
finish.
is you know it, I know
fact
it.
is
Like that's
that
not evidence.
There is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware
You're right.
of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important to people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people
Blue
who
collar
have
job.
money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it
That's what I like
together.
about Biden,
We
man.
can take
Yeah.
this on and we can
He
defeat
needs to have it.
racism.
Yeah, his uniting message. He needs to
President
focus on
Trump's
that more. I
During the
think.
Obama
I agree.
Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson. You look at. You go to many.
It wasn't
places.
top
Look at
down.
Oakland. Look
The
what
hatred
happened
we're
in
seeing
Oakland.
now
Look
is
what
top
happened in
down.
Baltimore.
Yeah.
The
Look
president
what
can't
happened.
condemn it,
Frankly,
so
was
it's
more
festering in the
violent than we've
And I
streets.
mean,
even seen
I
now.
remember
But
Ferguson,
the
right? Like
reason
this
is that
this
the
year has been
Democrats
the
that run
craziest
these
since
cities
like
ridiculous.
there was not a
don't
year
talk
like
like
this
you about
as
law
far
and
as
order.
the
Violent
You still
crime.
haven't
protests
been violent.
during
Are you in
Obama.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
I
it.
totally agree with you,
Law
and
order? Go ahead,
Yes,
say
I'm
it.
a-
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
Loses
Law and order.
Let him
Law and order with justice.
I actually
where
thought the
people get
Hillary
treated
Trump
fairly.
debate was more
And the fact of the
substantive
matter
at
is
this point.
violent crime went down
Yeah, this is rough.
17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down
He-
much more.
If I hate Biden,
All right,
I'm
all right,
like, yep.
you're-
I hate Trump, I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
Mr. President,
every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America.
Or don't mind, I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick.
Particularly,
Yeah,
and
sure,
you often
sure.
blame
So,
that on
take your time.
Democratic
Bye, fam, for the
mayors and
moment.
Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200% crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've never
wouldn't
seen.
know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
I was,
better.
raised,
Go ahead. Wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the
I think that Joe
suburbs.
Biden's
His
a good
failure
person to
deal with
talk
the
about the
environment.
suburbs
They're being
because he
flooded.
actually
They're being
is
Yeah.
kind of the
loud
politician of the
because he is
suburbs, you know?
refusing to do it.
Yeah, he's
That's
from
why the suburbs
Scranton,
are
which
in
is
trouble.
just
I do
like
want to talk about
suburb
this issue of
America
law and order,
as
though,
F.
and in the joint recommendation.
Yeah, because somehow it's
that
like
came from the
Democrats are
Biden,
against
Bernie
suburbs
Sanders
and
task
like
force.
pro
You
like
talked about,
crime in
quote,
inner cities. It's like, no,
reimagining
it's
policing.
not true.
Well, we have to remember
First
too
of
that
all, what does
again, like what
reimagining
Joe Biden just
policing
alluded to
mean,
is
and
that
do
in the
you
past,
support-
especially in the
Let me
40s, 50s,
if I
and
might finish this
60s,
question.
suburbs
What
was
does
a dog
reimagining
whistle for like
policing mean,
white
and
America.
do you
It was
support
the
the
idea
Black
that like,
Lives
oh,
Matter,
the urban communities are going to move out to the suburbs and threaten
call
suburban way of
for,
life, which was basically,
community
I mean, again, the Ku Klux
control
Klan
policing.
even admitted it that they changed the way they talked about it because of this. It was a dog whistle to mean, black people invading white America.
And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the community.
Community policing, something I've always liked.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what
in
they're
prevent-
talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about.
Trump doesn't even know what anyone's talking
That-
about
that
at this
is not
point, I don't
true.
He
think.
doesn't have any law
Well,
support.
look,
He has no law enforcement
that's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not, look,
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group.
Trump only
that
has it
supports you.
because of
Name one
partisan
group that came out and
lines.
supported you. Go
Look,
ahead.
look.
Think. We have time.
we don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think
except
about
to say-
it.
Look,
Name one
folks,
law enforcement group that came out and supported
Oh, God, man.
I'm going to take back the moderator's
I don't
role,
think there are any.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon?
Oh, yes.
and
What is
said,
the proper way of
"Hey, you gotta
protesting?
stop this,
Oof.
bring in the National
I mean, they
Guard,
You and I
do
actually
whatever
might
it
disagree
takes,
on
you
that,
stop
but
days and months of
good
violence
question.
Well,
in Portland."
I
I
mean,
don't hold public office.
yeah,
now.
that's a whole different debate.
I
But
am
they
a
have to
former
go out and
vice
say
president.
they're
I've
only
made
for
it
peaceful
clear.
protest. If
I've
you
made
say
it
you're for
clear in my
violent
public
protest
statements
at this
that the
stage, it's
violence
political
should be
suicide.
prosecuted.
So of
It
course
should be
Biden has to
prosecuted.
say, you
Anyone
know,
who commits
I'm
it should
only
be
Never called for the
support peaceful
people,
protest.
the leader, excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call
Because
bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
here-
Probably true.
Here's the
But
thing.
no,
I
that-
sent
sir,
in
no,
the
wait, I
U.S.
asked him a
Marshals to
question.
get the killer
No,
of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3
Mr.
days,
President Trump,
Portland
President
wouldn't do
Trump,
anything. I
these
had to send in the
interruptions-
U.S. Marshals.
President
They took
Trump,
care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think
Most political
Kellyanne
scientists,
Conway.
experts,
think she
blah, blah,
She
blah,
said
they all
that.
say that.
And so here's the,
All right.
but here's the point.
Go
The
ahead.
point is that that's
Chaos
why
and
he
fear
just
help
keeps
Trump.
trying to rile everything up.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his
No,
statement.
you have
His statement.
repeatedly.
Wait,
you have
just 1
no.
second.
You've been talking
He
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would
no,
love
you
to
know,
end it.
sir.
I would love to
Chris Wallace is
you
so
wanna switch the seats.
so done.
very quickly.
We can do that, but
I'd
I'm
send
no,
in the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they
Jeez.
don't want the National Guard.
Chris Wallace
You
is going to
have
drink a
repeatedly
tall
criticized
beer
the
after
vice
this.
president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia
we go.
groups and to say
Sure.
that they need to stand down
Biden's
and
like,
not
hopefully
add
not.
to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do that.
specifically?
I'm willing to do that. He
I
obviously
would
doesn't give a
say- I would
crap.
say
He doesn't care.
Almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what do you? What do
If
you?
look-
What do you
He's asterisking
I'm
it.
willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Let's
Say it.
just
Do
a
it.
quick
Say it.
fact check. The FBI
You wanna call
considers
him-
white
what do
supremacy
you
the
wanna call him?
largest
Give me a name.
domestic
Give me a
terrorist
name.
threat.
Go ahead.
Supremacists
Who
and
would
right
you like me to condemn?
white
Proud Boys.
supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
Jesus.
Somebody's got to do something about
He mentioned the
Antifa
Proud
and the
Boys.
left, because this is not a right
Asterisks it,
wing.
man. He's like, yeah, I hate speech, but the Proud Boys
But-
stand back. They're good people.
White
You know.
supremacists. Antifa's an idea,
Asterisks
not an
it every
organization.
time.
Not militia.
I believe in rights, but
Yeah, there it is. There's the FBI.
Director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna,
you know what?
no,
He's
no, that,
wrong.
we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're
Everybody
moving.
put
When a
you
bat
advice
hits
in
you
your
over, it's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are
Antifa is a dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on.
I agree
to
with Trump that
Trump
Antifa's dangerous. I also think
you-
QAnon fans, Proud Boys. I think there's a lot of dangerous ideas, and
Yeah,
both
well-
these men should step in.
It is
I also think
generally a
Antifa's not
referendum
organized,
on his
right? You can,
record.
yeah,
But Vice
it
President Biden, you
exists
like
for
to
sure,
quote one
and
of
there's
your dad's
dumbasses that think they're
sayings,
cool
which
with
is,
bike
"Don't
locks
compare
going
me
around
to the
burning stuff.
Almighty,
But it's not an
compare me
organized. It's
to
not
the
doesn't have like
alternative."
a
And in this
leader or a
case, sir,
movement
you are
like
the
the Proud
alternative.
Boys has a real
Looking
leader and a movement and stuff.
At both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you.
That's why Antifa and
why should
QAnon, I think, are
voters
both
elect you
dangerous because they
president
don't have
over your
leadership.
opponent?
There's
In
no
this
like
segment,
voice
President Trump, you
to
go
it.
first,
Well,
2
the
minutes.
QAnon's leadership is Trump,
Because
man.
there has
I mean,
never
like,
been
pretty
an
much. They,
administration
I mean, kind of.
president
They fawned
who
over his
has
every
done
word.
More than I've done in a period of
Fawn,
4.5
not
years.
fond,
And that's
fawn over his
despite
every word.
The
I
impeachment
mispronounced.
hoax, and you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole.
I was
big
in Seattle
con
during
job.
Chaz Chop.
But
Wow.
despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both
I'm
flanks
sorry.
and behind me and above, There has never been an administration that's
Yeah, see, there are raw
done
voices wanting to be
greatest
heard
before
until
COVID came in,
literally
the
law
greatest
enforcement
economy in
cannot
history,
get in
the
there
lowest
because of the
unemployment
protests,
numbers.
and so you're
Everything
seeing
was good. Everything
unnecessary
was going. And by
bloodshed.
the way,
And
there was
I think
nobody
voices
going
can be
to
heard in other
happen.
ways than
People were
literally
calling me
breaking
for
down
the
your
first
city's
time
like
in years,
local
they were
dynamics
calling,
and government.
And they were saying it's time maybe, and then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the
I don't think
military,
Chaz and Chop were a
Space Force,
good
and all of the other things.
outcome.
A fixing
Peaceful
of
protests.
the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take
Jesus.
care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military.
This is the chance to talk about the
job that
vet
we've done-
comment.
and
If
I'll tell
Biden
you
was
something,
like,
some
what
people
you
say
said,
maybe
vets
the
are
most important.
suckers.
By the end of the first term, I'll
I
have
don't know why he hasn't
approximately
already jumped on
300
that.
Yeah.
Federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully
Definitely with
3
you.
great Supreme Court justices. That is a record the likes of which very few people.
It's Trump's
and you know
appeal,
one of the
man.
reasons I'll have so many judges, because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you, because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you
Supreme
president
That might be.
as opposed to
Yeah,
President
Supreme Court is
Trump? You have
important
2
to both
minutes
parties,
uninterrupted.
so that's a big.
As president,
And yeah,
we've
Trump's
become
done
weaker,
really well.
sicker, poorer, more
That-
divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With
Didn't cause a
regard to
recession,
being
I don't
weaker,
think.
The
He
fact
just
is that
didn't
I've gone head to
react
head with
quickly
Putin
enough to it.
and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's
And the whole
puppet. He
world's in a
still refuses
recession.
to even say anything to
COVID
Putin
did
about
it. I
the bounty
I
on the
wouldn't
heads
go
of
that
American
far as Trump
soldiers.
did, but
Here's the bounties.
And by the way,
Mr.
my
President,
son,
wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
he never keeps his word. Can you add back
No,
He's
I'm
a
not
person
asking.
that's
That
not
was a
the only
rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being
There it is.
and just being suckers. My
Saved it for the
son
end. Interestingly,
was
look, he
in
saved it for the
Iraq.
end, which is
He
smart.
spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there.
Amen, Joe Biden.
And I resent
Amen.
it like hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter
you
Shut the
I
hell
don't
up,
know,
Trump.
Bo.
thrown
Wow,
out of the
wow.
military. He was thrown
Wow.
out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It
for
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice
I'm
president.
not talking about
Once you
Hunter,
became
Trump.
vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made
son-
a fortune.
My son,
and he didn't have a job.
my son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And
For
I'm
his
proud
son.
of him.
But why was
I'm
he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All right,
of
But he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right,
tens of
he was
millions of
given
dollars. That
tens
is
of
People have
millions.
demons.
totally
President Trump,
discredited.
you've already been through.
Totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a
I know, but when
judgment call
somebody
here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay,
from
great.
the
Let's talk
mayor
about-
of Moscow.
What's that emote? I like that.
Report
Pico
is
cute.
totally discredited.
I
Mitt
think-
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers'
that
money.
wholesome
That report
vibe.
is written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay.
Yeah, all
The
right.
forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows.
Oh,
Over
my
your 4
God.
years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now,
Do we?
we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our
of
businesses
COVID,
are
right.
doing well.
Cleaner
As
air
far as
because
the
no one's been
fires are
driving
concerned,
cars. That's
you
true.
need forest management in addition to everything
But also,
else.
like, the idea of, like,
forest
oh,
floors
clean
are
air,
loaded
clean
up
water,
with
like, that's where
trees, dead
environmentalism
trees
was
that
in
are
the
years old,
70s.
and they're
Like, we're
like
way
tinder,
past that where it's
and
like
leaves and everything else.
we're
You drop
in
a
the
cigarette in there,
Anthropocene
the whole
extinction.
forest burns down. You've got to
Right,
have forest
right.
management. You've got to
Whole
have
different
clean
conversation.
air.
Yeah, like, I want clean air.
One's already been finalized,
I
right?
believe
Like,
that we have to
Yeah.
do
Okay.
everything we can to have
Right.
immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting
notice
billion
that
trees
Trump's
in
face
Million
says
Tree
one thing and
Project,
his
and
actions
it's
do
very
another
exciting.
thing. Yeah, he likes
That
clean
human
water.
pollution
The
and
EPA
gas
sure
and
hasn't been
greenhouse
pushing
No,
that.
the EPA
emissions
has not been.
contributes
No,
to
the
the
EPA has been
global warming
stripped,
of
and they're the
I think a
ones
lot of
that
things do,
make
but I
sure
think
that
to an
our
extent,
waterways
yes.
are
I think
clean
to an
and
extent,
test
yes,
do
but I
testing and
also
do
think
lawsuits.
We have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If
Because
that
it
was
is.
cleaned,
I mean, both
if
of
that
us are
were-
from
If
California.
you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe,
That's
they
just
live
not
their
true.
forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their
Well,
forests. They
he's
manage
right
their
on
forests.
mismanagement.
I
There
was
is a
with the head
factor of
a
mismanagement,
major
but
But it's not the
a bigger
reason the
picture.
it's
not.
it's to say
We
that
said,
like
"Sir,
managing
we
it better,
have
you would not
trees
have
that
this
are
issue at
far
all.
more-
Like, dude,
they-
no.
they
Like, we've
ignite
had
much
a
easier
decade of
in
drought. We just got
California.
past a
There
drought.
shouldn't
We
be that
have,
problem. I
you
spoke
know,
with the governor about it. I'm getting along
like, there's a
very
lot
well
of
with the
factors, but
governor.
you
But I
can't
said,
just
you know, at
rake
some
the
point,
forest.
You can't every year have
I agree with
hundreds
you.
of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
But, sir,
That's burning down because of a lack of
But,
management.
sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer, it would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California,
Personal
they simply
automobiles do
outsource.
not make up
A lot
much
of cars
pollution
off the
anyway.
market
It's
because people
mostly
would be able to
industrial.
afford a car. Now,
industrial
It's
action.
just fuel amount, yeah.
Yeah, and agriculture. It's not really personal
Many
automobiles.
people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline.
This is the stupidest
And I'm
conversation
looking
about
at
climate
electric
change
cars
I've probably
too.
ever heard in
I'm
my
all for
life.
electric
Yeah.
cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
It's a politicized argument over
I'd like you to
handling.
respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact...
Not absolutely,
when
but...
during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas.
Yeah, renewable
and
energy.
oil.
The cost of renewable
Nobody's
energy has gone
gonna
down a
build
ton
another,
in the last,
like
probably 8
coal-fired
years.
plant in
It's
America.
continued to do so
No
under
one's
Trump
gonna
as
build
well.
another oil-fired plant in
Just
America.
because of the
They're gonna
technology's
move
better.
to
Which is good.
renewable energy,
Yeah,
number
like
one.
solar.
Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able
Right.
to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. future. We're going to build.
It has.
a
I'm slowly trying to be more
economy that,
sustainable
in
every day.
fact,
That's awesome.
Is going to provide for
That's awesome.
the
Yeah,
ability of us to
sustainability
take
is the
4
name of the
million
game.
buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in
Lowering
fact,
that
will-
carbon
they'll-
footprint.
They'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord.
Yeah,
I will
that's
join
big
the
for me.
Paris
That's
Accord
personal.
because with us out
Yeah,
of it, look
personally,
what's
that's
happening.
really huge for
It's
me.
all falling apart.
We
And
need to be on
talk
the world
about
stage.
Huge for me, but-
Yeah.
no relationship to, with foreign
I mean,
policy.
it's But what- huge for
but
me,
what-
but-
but what?
The rainforests of Brazil are being torn down.
Hey,
They're
I
being
still think
knocked
it's
down.
symbolic. Like, I
More-
think we need to be
more
having a
carbon is
day-to-day
absorbed in that
conversation about how we
rainforest
actually
than every
do
bit of
wean
carbon that's
ourselves
emitted
off
in the United
slowly
States.
from carbon.
Instead
And I
of
don't think
doing
that's the
something
actual
about
conversation
that,
anyone's
I would
willing
be
to have.
gathering up and making sure we have the
Like,
countries of the world
I always
coming up
compare
with
it to
$20
a
billion and say, "Here's $20
alcoholic or a
billion.
heroin
Stop-
addict. Like,
stop
you can't just tell them, okay,
t-
we're just going to
tearing
cut you
down
off. It's
the
good. You're going to
forest.
be fine
And if you
tomorrow.
don't, then
There's going to
you're
be
gonna have
repercussions. And in the same
significant
way, I
economic
don't think we can just
consequences.
cut a global economy off of oil. And a lot of the Green New Deal proposals I've seen want to do that. And I do think there would be a loss of jobs if that happened.
And he's drawn his line.
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not
I think
a
Trump
problem.
wants to
We can-
discredit it,
you
and
can now
Democrats
emit
want
more
to speed it
methane
up.
without
And
being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that. Well, the fact is, it's all true. And here's the
Talking
deal.
about the
Hey,
Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion
I'm
or
t-
$20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm
all arbitrary,
talking
though. We
about-
don't really know.
Now
It's not
building
Yeah,
happening.
there's not a
and
set.
rebuild
Yeah.
the building.
No,
It's the
that is
dumbest,
not-
most
that
ridiculous.
is not-
Where airplanes are out of business,
That's it.
where two-car systems are out.
That was the Ocasio-Cortez thing. That's not like
not
what
true
Trump's
either, right?
Biden's
This is
platform is.
This is a 100
Simply-
trillion.
Look,
That's more money
agree.
than our
That is-
country could make in
that is
100
simply
years if we're
not
going by.
the case.
All right, let me,
It will destroy our
because I
country.
actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the
You also have to wonder too is what is the cost of not doing anything over that same time, right? The cost of not doing anything with and then letting fossil fuels go and then climate change. Like there's a cost to not doing anything either. It's not like there's a zero and then the trillions for the plan. There's another cost as well.
It's going to create millions of good paying jobs.
I don't know
There
what
was a
that
big
is.
report that came out last year from people like Microsoft,
She
Google,
wants to get it-
and they were all
get
talking
rid of
about how
it.
climate change is big because they will lose profits even as giant, like
Yeah.
multinational corporate.
Yeah,
It's like
there's-
there is. You're right. You're absolutely right.
There's economic incentive to be green. It's not just like a moral issue.
I just think that we need to take a more nuanced look at how we do it, and I don't think either side are willing to. Because if we did take the entire global economy off of oil, or try to, it would be astronomically bad.
Well, I don't think anyone's arguing to do it overnight.
We spend billions.
I mean, when I say overnight, I mean like over the next like 5-6 years. I still think that's overnight in a sense of like.
Sure. Well, yeah, 10, 15 could even be overnight. And 2035 is 15 years away. So it's ambitious.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. It's ambitious.
In Iowa. That
Absolutely.
didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen,
Wait a
we...
minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world?
Are you kidding
He
me?
was in the. They went to the Paris Accord.
Russia does. India does.
Well, why didn't Joe Biden do it
It's
back in the
supposed to be good.
'60s,
And by the
Drew?
way,
That's what Trump's
Yeah.
asking.
A couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not
$20
my
billion.
plan.
That's
The Green
well,
New
you want to
Deal
rebuild every
is not
building.
my plan.
I want to rebuild
All right,
every
you have-
knew
you have to-
anything
Oh,
about-
God, guys.
He made a statement.
But he's right. It's not his plan. That was like
Something about the military.
that was like the
He and his
progressive Bernie
friends made it up,
Ocasio-Cortez
and then they
wing.
went with it. I never
Yeah.
said it.
Okay.
That is
What
not
he
true.
did
Sir,
is he
you're done in
said
this segment.
he called
Mr.
the
Vice-
military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
And he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid bastards.
please,
He
sir.
said it.
When did he say
I would
that?
never
I'd
say
love
that.
to see that.
Play it.
Go ahead,
You're
Mr.
on
Vice
tape.
President. answered his final question.
The final question.
He was actually
is,
like
I can't
referring to
remember which
like
of all was ranting.
one person, and it was a
I'm
joke.
having a little trouble myself, but
Gotcha.
and about the economy.
I've seen
and
the
about
Not
video.
calling all
what it's
those.
gonna
No, he was
cost.
speaking to the
Calling all the
military.
I mean, the Green New Deal
He's
and
speaking
the
to the
idea of
military.
Yeah.
what your environmental
Green New
changes
Deal-
will do.
The
Okay.
Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not
We can-
gonna
I'll get the
build
clip for
plants
tomorrow.
That in fact are great.
Yeah,
polluting
yeah.
plants.
Tomorrow
You're
we do
building
our
a Green New
actual
Deal?
analysis. That'd be
You
fun.
support
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Not fun, but you know what I
That's a
mean.
big statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just
block.
lost the radical left.
I support.
It is the
Biden
radical
plan
left.
that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment. Election integrity. As
Ooh,
we meet
I was hoping this
tonight,
was gonna come up.
There we
millions of
go.
Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks? Because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? Or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me
What?
spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won. From the day I came down the escalator with our first
presidency,
lady, they
his
were a
campaign,
disaster. They
they're
were
all
a
built on
disgrace to our
conspiracies,
country.
and they will
we've
die
caught
on
'em.
conspiracies.
We've caught
Yeah.
them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea
If
for
you
the
caught,
Logan Act against
what
General
happened to
Flynn.
put
You gotta
Hillary in
take a
prison?
look
If you
at
caught
that,
her,
because we
why
caught
isn't she?
you in a sense, and
Like what?
Yeah.
What'd you catch her
President
doing?
Obama was sitting in the
Legal.
office. He knew about
If
it
it was
too, so
legal,
don't tell me
okay.
about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country.
Yeah, to registered
There's
voters.
Fraud. They found
To
them in
registered
creeks.
voters.
They found some with the name Trump. Just happened to have the name Trump just the other
Yeah,
day.
and
in a
guess what? The
waste paper
ones that
basket.
are jokes
They're
like
being
that
sent
don't
all
get
over the
counted.
place. They sent
There's
two
there
in
is a
Democrat
process.
area. They
Like
sent
if I
1,000
write Donald
ballots,
Duck
everybody got
and I
two
put a
ballots.
dick
This is
on my
going to be a
election
fraud
ballot,
like you've never
they
seen.
don't count
The
it.
other thing, it's nice on November 3rd. You're watching.
Well, Drew, he
every
doesn't
single one of the elections.
understand
No, I
that.
know.
Because
I know. Well, he
people
doesn't
are
listen
really
to his
happy with
own
the job we've done.
Homeland
But
Security,
you
and he
know
doesn't
what?
listen to his own
We won't
FBI.
know. We might
He
not
doesn't
know
listen to
for
any of the
months,
experts.
because these ballots are going to be all over.
Which is
Take a look at
horrifying.
what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look
What
at
happened?
in
Trump always says,
Virginia
"Take a
and
look
other
at what
places.
happened." It's like,
They're not
okay,
losing 2% 1%, 1%.
Can you tell us what
by the way,
happened?
is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine?
I don't even know what he's talking about because he doesn't cite sources. He doesn't talk about examples. It's just you know what happened. And I guess his QAnon base do know what happened. I guess maybe we're out in the dark.
Major states with that. All run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump.
It's a rigged election.
You're going to be able
It's a rigged election that he's won
true.
before.
Going.
for months that mail-in balloting is going
He's
to be
sewing
a
it, man.
disaster. You say
He's
it's
a rigged
rigged,
election.
that it's going to lead to
how?
fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I don't think I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because
I don't
what's
even know what
happening
that
is
means.
incredible. I read today where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
They
are you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about it?
left
There
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now.
do
What
is
are
you
gonna
go and
do?
vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's
I'm not-
okay,
I know
or
your
you go and
complaint.
vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go
have
and vote. You go and
No,
vote
but
like
what I'm
they,
saying is, what are
like
you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people?
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
There is no
This is
evidence of that.
not going to end well.
5 states have had
go ahead,
mail-in
sir.
ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home.
Yeah, you're a registered voter.
They're saying is that it has to be a postmark by the time, by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes.
I'm looking the internet. I see no story about this voting harvesting going on in West Virginia. So I see about 100,000 West Virginians said they're voting by mail because of safety reasons.
Yeah.
Has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out.
Exactly.
Or there is some
If
other
you don't properly fill out,
irregularity,
or
or
it's
they
like a,
missed the deadline. So the
it's
question
not
I have
fraud
is,
though. It's
are you
like a,
concerned
like you just didn't fill, like
that
they
the
didn't fill it
Supreme
out right. They
Court
don't know
with
how to
a
count it,
Justice
so they don't
Barrett
count it.
will settle
But
any
that's not
dispute?
fraud. Fraud
I'm
is like
concerned that any
changing
court would
votes.
settle this because here's the deal.
or voting twice.
When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able
you sign
to,
it.
if in fact you can verify that's you when before the
have to.
ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the.
Trump's putting a wrecking ball into everything that is like maintained at least some sense of normalcy.
That is totally
Yeah.
We vote.
All right.
That might be enough right there to
Senate and swamp
destroy
the system.
this election.
You know it can't be done. You know it can't. And already
All
there's
right,
been
so now
fraud.
Mail service
Final-
delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen, in the
185
final
million
question
pieces of
is,
mail a day.
in 8
ballots.
states.
Yeah,
we
they can do
talk
it.
to-
Chris Wallace
in
talked-
8
We
states,
talked about
Pull
this.
the plug.
workers
We
are
talked about this about the
prohibited
post office. How the post
currently
office
by
is
law,
actually
8
like.
states, from
It's
even
busier
beginning
for
to
Christmas.
process
Not the election is not going to be
ballots,
that
even
busy.
take
It's
them
like
out of
busier
the
at Christmas. Like
envelopes
they
and
can handle it.
flatten them until election day. That means that it's
People that worked at the
likely,
post office
because
said
there's
that.
going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks.
Could be months.
Until we find out.
Yeah, that's
who
what
the
Trump wants.
would like
He
it.
Trump wants it to be
So
months.
First for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently
will, Trump will.
certified? President Trump, you
I'm
go first.
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully because that's what has to
What?
happen. I am
Vigilantism.
urging them to do it. As you know, today there was
right?
a big problem.
Vigilantism.
In Philadelphia,
Well,
they
it's
went
also a
into
felony
watch.
to
They're called
intimidate
poll
voters.
watchers, a very safe, very nice thing.
Yes, it is.
They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia.
More worried
Bad
actually not
things.
about the
And I
felony.
am
I'm worried
urging-
about the actual
I am
repercussions
urging
of
my
that.
people. I hope it's going to be a
The
fair election.
direct
If it's a fair
repercussions. It
election,
scares me.
I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what.
How?
from
What's
a
your-
common sense-
what's your-
I'll tell you what it means. It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots.
What's his basis for
They're not equipped to-
error?
These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two,
Yes,
they
they are,
cheat.
though.
They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
You think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory
We're in for some
until
dark
the
times, my
election is
friend.
independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since at the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established.
No.
Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race
I
in
asked
Manhattan.
you had an opportunity
Look
to
at
respond.
Carolyn Monroe.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because
has to.
once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to
if
see
in
an
fact,
honest ballot.
Problem too is
Will you
that
say that's the end of it? This is
the
end of
military,
this
like
debate.
Biden's not mentioning, the military would have to
Leave it
take
there.
Trump out
To
of
be
office,
continued
which would
as
be
in more debates as we go
Well, that's
on.
so far down the
President
line,
Trump,
though. I wouldn't.
Right.
Mention, you wouldn't.
President
That would be
Biden,
bad
it's
to
been
mention that
an
'cause it
interesting
scare
hour and
people into thinking it's a
half. I wanna
military
thank you
coup or
both
something.
For participating in the first of three
Good point.
debates.
Very
that
good
you've
point.
agreed to
I think he did it
engage
well.
in.
He's just
We
like,
wanna
I'll
thank
accept the
Case
results he
Western
won't.
Reserve
Kind of like you said.
University
Yeah.
and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event, the next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates.
Okay, Drew, I think we could
One
cut
week from
off at least the
tomorrow,
debate,
October
maybe have
7th
like
at
a
the
couple minutes of
University
closing thought.
Yeah. So obviously, for those that are watching, we're gonna have a more in-depth analysis. We're gonna do that tomorrow. We're gonna record it tomorrow and put it up shortly after. But for now, we just wanted to kind of get some like initial reactions. So yeah, Alex, what did you think?
Well, there was a big dividing line down the left and the right on that screen, and ironically, Biden was on the right and Trump was on the left. But I think it was kind of symbolic, this dividing line between the narrative that Trump was saying and the narrative that Biden was saying. And I've been listening to Sam Harris talk a lot with a lot of tech experts about how basically a lot of Americans for the last decade have been fed information. They've been fed their own Wikipedia. They've been fed information they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And honestly, I saw Biden do well for the people who have been fed facts, and I've seen Trump do well with people who have been fed kind of conspiratorial thinking. And that's my big issue with this debate is they're screaming over each other, but each side thinks each side thinks their candidate won. And it's because of where we're at. And I didn't see anything good out of that. Honestly, I don't have a single good takeaway except for that I still think Biden has humility and Trump doesn't. But that's really not a good takeaway for a presidential election. But that's literally all I got out of this. I mean, Chris Wallace literally might be the MVP of this debate, the most valuable player. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're right. Look, I definitely think you're right. Again, we talked about how almost everybody is already in their corner, right? I mean, there's really not a huge margin of undecided voters that are, swinging one way or another. I mean, they still exist. Of course they do. But yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people were moved by this to be either an ex-Biden, now Trump supporter, or the other way around. I don't think any Biden supporters, I don't think Biden lost any supporters that he already had, and I don't think Trump lost any supporters that he already had. It's the question of how desperate, like, it's a question of getting those people to get up and vote. So one is Joe Biden mentioned multiple times where he looked directly in the camera and he said, go out and vote. You know, this is your destiny. You decide the future of this country. Don't feel scared to vote, right? And I think that was smart. You know, he obviously is trying to be the guy that's like, you know, getting engagement because he needs it. I did think that both of them, you know, those shouting matches were just so cringy to watch. And like, again, like you said, Chris Wallace, we said it earlier during the reactions, was just, he felt like a preschool teacher. He felt like a preschool teacher holding them both by the ears at some points. Just like, would you quiet down? Would you shut up? I think Biden needs to be more aggressive in the next debate. I do think so, because when you kind of like that boxing analogy, when you're on the ropes, right, and Trump is like, why didn't you talk to Biden? Like, how did Biden get from Moscow that $3.5 million gift? What did you, all this? And he keeps firing off rapid questions. To me, I don't think it looks good when you're just like, can we move on? Can we talk about something else? I understand that's like, he probably thinks, oh, I'm the mature one. I'm not going to engage in this I'm not going to engage in this, like, you know, BS yelling match. I understand that, but I don't think it looks good. For me, I'd like to see Biden be more aggressive. He did a little bit of it with the tax returns. He said, you know, release your tax returns. Let us see it. Let us see it. He said it a couple times. He needed to do a lot more of that. He needs to put Donald Trump on the defense, and I didn't see enough of that tonight. However, I don't think that Biden did terrible. I don't think he, like, really messed up. He didn't have any huge gaffes. He's slow to speak sometimes, but I don't think we'll see any huge movement off of this. I don't think we're going to see a huge swing.
No, I think we're seeing the phenomenon that we've seen in 2016 as well, is that there's a qualified candidate, controversial, and maybe you don't agree with their policies, maybe ill-equipped to actually be the president, but it's a candidate who is qualified. And Trump basically just kind of muddles the waters and lowers the bar. And then the other candidate is kind of forced to tread water with Trump and kind of deal with kind of what Trump's rhetoric is. And that's what I saw again tonight, is that Trump set the bar and Trump controlled the game. Even though I do think he looked bad at times, I don't think Biden looked good enough to outshine Trump's negatives.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost the political genius of Donald Trump, is that he lowers the bar and then maybe raises the bar a minuscule amount, enough that he still can control what is happening.
I might be misquoting, but I believe it's Mark Twain who said, you know, never argue with morons because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and that is what Donald Trump does. And again, like, it's tough to combat because he does just rapid fire say things that, you know, I think anyone that understands how these scientists and experts work knows they're not true, right? Like, again, like the mail-in ballots, but he just rapid fires off 80 million ballots, hundreds of thousands not counted, and he, you know, and it's all these things that you have to look way deeper to get a better understanding, and of course experts do, and they know that it's not true. It's way more nuanced, but he just does a rapid fire, and yeah, it's like for some of this debate, he definitely dragged Biden down and beat him with experience as far as being an idiot. I mean, again, I do think Trump's wrong on these facts, but he's very smart in the way that he portrays them and uses that rhetoric that, again, is so obvious to me that is, you know, a rhetorical device. Like, I know it, you know it, everybody knows it, right? All these things that ideally you should recognize as not a correct way to back up a real claim, but just a debate tactic. Trump does it a lot. But again, I don't think there was a clear winner. I don't think there's going to be a huge shift in the polls. And yeah, I don't know. It was interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's close it up for this conversation, and we'll be back tomorrow with a more nuanced analysis. I think this was a good analysis. It was fun. I think we need to do this more. Obviously, there's more debates coming up. I had fun. I enjoyed the feedback as well. I did not enjoy the conversation at hand, but I think you're on it, where you don't want to debate with morons, and unfortunately, that is where we're at. So with that, let us know what you guys think. I've enjoyed the feedback, especially thank you, Ekshikyo and a Ukrainian dude, or a Ukrainian guy. Viva Poland. Yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having the stream. And yeah, keep an eye out on the YouTube for this as well as other episodes in the future. Take care.